Hi, welcome to Future Proofing. I'm your host Ekalavya and this show is presented by Intel vPro, built for business. In this show, we usually talk about Web3, blockchain, metaverse, some sense, a little nonsense, and usually we have a whole lot of fun, right? Today's episode is about media and entertainment. We've already covered a little parts of this in our previous few episodes, so we might go a little technical today. We might also talk about some examples of what's happening in this media and entertainment space. I've worked in the media and entertainment space for more than a decade, right? In the studio today with me is someone who's worked in media for a fair bit. She studied blockchain technology at Harvard and currently leads strategy for WWE across India and South Asia. Join me after this quick Intel vPro break in a fascinating conversation with Chandni Davda. Hi, welcome back. In the studio with me today is Chandni. Chandni, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Chandni, so of course, you mentioned to me that we'll go a little technical and deep dive into media, entertainment, etc. Especially you have a book coming up, you studied in Harvard. But Chandni, let's start off by you telling me, what's your first memory of the internet or the web?
Wow. The first memory is my early days when my childhood best friend would just come and tell me that I'm going to go to the cyber cafe to chat on Yahoo Messenger with a couple of strangers on the internet. And I was like, what is even that? So I started to go with her to cyber cafe to explore what is the internet. But then I started to, instead of getting hooked onto Yahoo Messenger, I actually started to explore websites and started to read stuff. So getting into a cyber cafe and getting fascinated by how am I connected to so much of information, where is this information coming from, was my absolutely first memory of the internet.
What year was this?
Wow, that was 2000, yeah.
Okay, so this is early Web 1 space,
Absolutely,
right? So
yeah.
Chandni, tell me, you've of course worked in media, worked in digital media. How have you personally seen web from at that time evolve to Web 2.0 and now we're talking about Web 3.0, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Early Web 1.0, it's already been spoken in so many episodes before, was static. You could not interact. Web 2.0 became interactive. That's when your social media platforms came on. Now with Web 0.3, the only difference is that in Web 2.0, the only thing you could own was the domain name. On 3.0, you literally own everything that you create.
What do you mean by that?
So whether you create a piece of content, you write a tweet on a platform like Twitter, you actually own that, which means the number of likes and comments and engagement that you get on that particular piece of content that you've created will pay you not just in, say, engagement, but you will actually get money coming into your account.
Okay.
So this is something that I've also spoken about in my book, that Barack Obama had, just composed a tweet which was the highest liked tweet in the history of Twitter. But then who earned the money out of it? Twitter probably got the engagement rate high up. Barack Obama got nothing apart from the praise and the credibility of writing that tweet.
Okay.
But the credits of writing the tweet, I'm sorry. How about he just earned the money equivalent of how many likes he got on that tweet?
Okay.
So that's what you can actually do on Web 3.0, which you could not in 2.0.
Great, right? So we'll talk a little more about your own personal experience of Web3 in a while. Tell me, right, like Harvard blockchain technology, how did that happen? How was it studying blockchain technology at Harvard? And like, it's a big thing, right?
I did not think it was a big thing at that time.
Okay.
I was studying at the university and I was studying while working full time. And, we were allowed to pick and choose, the subjects that we want to specialize in. So, yes, I did have blockchain as an option, which was, which looked something absolutely alien. And, what is even this compared to when you look at subjects like your business, international business or management and stuff. So this was intriguing. And I had a friend really talk me about blockchain. I was like, what is this? And then the friend just went like, no, this is something that's going to be huge in the future. So I am a naturally very curious person. So I was like, I need to know what this is. But yeah, I saw that it was highly technical. So I was a little intimidated to get into it in the beginning. But then the more I read about it, the more fascinating it started to sound. And I started to have sleepless nights. I was like, how could I not study this? But then I also had to, have that balance between, if I don't have good grades in this, which means I might just fail a subject and I may not earn my degree, or may have to just keep repeating or whatever, choose another subject. So it was very risky for me to actually study that without a hardcore tech background. I just had a digital marketing background. So, but I don't know. There's, you have to take risks in life. So I just dived head on and took up. So it was, a little bit difficult in the beginning, but I studied blockchain via case studies, which was only in finance, healthcare, supply chain. There was no case studies about media.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, right? Where does media and blockchain come into
so I did not formally study or have any case studies that spoke about applying blockchain to media. Also because of the fact that it was very nascent. They were still figuring the technology part of it. But of course, because I came from the media background, I started to research about can this be helpful in the media industry? And to my surprise, there was a ton of research and information on, yes, there is, possibility of this technology working for media and entertainment, but it is in its nascent stages. Mass adoption is probably a decade or 2 decades away. But it was very interesting to me. And just immediately after I finished doing my campus on course, the pandemic hit. So I was at home with nothing to do with just probably reading more and more, fulfilling my curiosity about the subject. There was most of it was just out of boredom, to be honest. And then I did not really have any sort of work experience in it, and I was like, how do I really get my hands-on experience on really being exposed to something like blockchain on media? And I was like, if nobody is giving you an opportunity, you take an opportunity. And I just started writing articles about what I felt, so writing about blockchain in the social media space, in the media and entertainment space, about how it is going to really solve the problems of bots on social media, how it is really going to solve the problems of equal compensation in the content space. And when I started to write the articles, a friend was like, you could just turn it into a book. Why are you just simply writing articles and blogs about it? So I was like, yeah, this can actually be a whole series and a whole book. And that's how it turned into a book, and which it came from the pandemic boredom. So had I not had that free time to myself, the book probably would have not been born. But here we are.
That's so interesting, Chandni. So, a lot, since I've also worked in media, and a lot of people know that I've been doing this podcast. Many people say, Eka, all we hear about is Bitcoin, Ether, and cryptocurrency. What does it have to do with media? So that's a question from all of them, right? To you, Ki, what does media and that's where you're understanding, right? For most people, Web3 and blockchain is just say Bitcoin and Ether, right? So what does Bitcoin and Ether have to do with media, and what probably you can just dive a little more into that whole blockchain aspect of things?
So everybody listening, I would first like to say, take the whole cryptocurrency and asset aspect of it away from the ecosystem aspect of it. Yes, of course, Bitcoin and Ethereum are like the Coca-Cola and Pepsi in the cryptocurrency world. Everybody's like, what's better? What's going to be big in the future? And there's just as many opinions as there are, right? So I personally am not involved in the financial side of it at all. I have not deep dived into it. The space that I have really researched hard is the ecosystem aspect of it, is the platform aspect of it. Bitcoin was by design. Now, again, if you really compare the two of them from a platform or an ecosystem perspective, they are like chalk and cheese. So Bitcoin is a financial decentralized ecosystem, while Ethereum is you can create dApps and smart contracts and actually really have your entire internet on the way the internet functions is just replicated on Ethereum. It's just that all the things that I mentioned about how people can get fair compensation is all done by technical mechanisms of how Ethereum works, which Bitcoin is not going to do. So again, they're two different.
I read a funny line, I said, just to explain it to people, Bitcoin is like an Excel sheet and Ethereum is like an Excel sheet with macros, right? And you can do so much more rather than just maintaining a ledger.
100%.
Chandni, we'll dive into smart contracts a little later. Before that, I want to talk about like close to Harvard, right? One of Harvard's most celebrated dropouts. He's so convinced about the metaverse that he's changed his entire company name into Meta.
Yeah.
Right? What is the metaverse which Zuckerberg is talking about?
Well, his vision of the metaverse is that earlier when digital just was all over, I think in 2010, 2012, when companies were trying to get into how do we go digital, how do we make use of social media, how do we do digital marketing, that was the screen age. Screens were exploding all over. How do we reach consumers on a mobile as well as a tablet as well as a television screen? Now we're moving from screen age to a metaverse where you are literally inside it. And he talks about you being able to be in just more than one place at a time. So I do not have to say cancel a friend's birthday party just because I can't get out from work before 7 or 8 p.m. So that also means that you can't skip going to your relative's house if they invited you with like any work.
But like help us understand, what does that mean? Like, does your personality get split into two? Are you cloned? Does AI take over? And like help us visualize, right?
Yeah, so you definitely have your VR technology where you are present in a situation and you can sit in one place and access two spaces at the same time. So you can two environments at the same time.
And then you keep switching between both.
And you keep switching, yeah. So you don't really, so physically you don't have to be
it's like
present.
Watching a show on your phone and also watching a show on the screen.
Yeah, you said it. You got it right. So yeah, that's exactly how it's going to be. We are almost kind of doing that right now. We are also watching a television show and we are also working.
Texting at the same time.
Or working. I'm doing my emails on my phone. Who would have imagined 15 years ago that I could actually be replying to a work email and working, probably even developing a strategy in my head, but also getting entertained with a TV show if I can.
Or a podcast, right?
Exactly. if I'm that good of a multitasker.
Sure.
So so right now mentally you can be in on 3 different screens. So then why not, if that environment is actually created, if your social gathering environment are actually replicated on the metaverse, and why wouldn't you want to be there?
So what is this? These are 3D avatars of people which exist in this digital universe?
Yes, they are 3D avatars.
Okay. And what's Facebook got to do with this, right? So the most common word which we hear is about decentralized, right? Most of the people are saying that big tech companies can't be trusted, right? And this is this don't trust anybody attitude, and no one company, no big tech company can own all data, all privacy, all elements, right? So what is this? Like, are there going to be multiple metaverses? Is this Facebook's metaverse? Is it going to be like metaverses linking to each other with APIs?
So right now, yes, there is a huge issue where though platforms like Facebook have done the unthinkable and they have connected the world in ways that we would have not imagined before, there are issues like, yes, we can't trust them because our data we don't know what's happening to our data. We don't know what you're doing to our data. We don't know where you're selling our data and making money from it. So because there's this whole lack of trust in these institutions now, they are trying to do something about it to still, stay relevant. And, Facebook is trying to get into the space because if you don't catch up,
this is the future, right?
Yeah, it is. You have to catch up. There's no two ways about it. You either go obsolete or you just
they're future-proofing themselves.
Exactly. So Facebook is in a way, and not just Facebook. There's companies like Spotify, and I'll just give you an example. It really costed Spotify a huge amount when they did not take data seriously. There was a huge lawsuit where they had to pay about, say, $25 million simply because of the fact that they were not able to give royalties for certain content. And that's not because they did not want to. They simply did not know who were the owners of the content that was used.
Okay, interesting.
So now the thing is that there needs to be streamlining, and that's where blockchain comes into the picture. With that, you can literally identify and track down a person to the very beginning of when they have actually, from the day they created the content to all the information that goes into packing a piece of content, right? So now Spotify has just partnered with the Media Chain Labs, where they are helping them add that blockchain layer to it, so they don't miss out on any of these opportunities and get into these lawsuits where they are, just simply being sued for stuff that they have not even intentionally done.
In fact, I read something where Zuckerberg says when he was being asked this question about decentralized, he basically says that what Microsoft did for the open source world, like many people were, like Microsoft was actually anti-open source. But then if for our viewers, those who know the history, like you'll see Microsoft did so much for actually the open source world, right? Like they gave up on patents, they gave up on rights, they allowed this industry to flourish. And Zuckerberg said he hopes to do that. But okay, just taking forward the metaverse question, right? And especially since we're talking about media and entertainment. Media and entertainment right now, primarily, if you look at it, most of the people are consuming it through OTT platforms, right? You have the likes of Amazon Prime, you have Netflix, in India you have Hotstar, you have so many, right? Where do these feature in this metaverse, right?
Okay. They will stay in the game if they address the current problems that the media and entertainment industry is facing. And
what are these problems?
And the three main problems are equal compensation. How does the money get distributed to the actual creators and the team involved in producing, say, a movie or a TV show or a piece of music?
But they usually just buy the rights off, right? Like primarily.
Let me get to that. So the three main issues are: how do you have fair compensation? How do you avoid any sort of piracy or fraud?
True.
And how do you really take away the middlemen who are actually eating almost 70 to 80% of your revenue? So tomorrow, if a particular artist has a gig and wants to, so the artist is basically the creator of the, let's say a track. Now, how much money does he end up getting? He will go to record labels to actually have exposure. Now, why do the record labels earn money? Simply because of information advantage. Why can't the artist directly connect to the consumer, and whatever money comes out of the consumer's pocket, 80% can go to the artist? Why? So right now, blockchain is working towards that model, giving the power
and to
back
probably
to the
automate
creators.
it, right? Because I'm sure there must be some contracts anyway which exist in place for successful musicians, for sure, right?
Yeah.
But
Now,
you're saying this will all get automated through, say, blockchain technology.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, if I were to just give you a very simple example of the podcast that you're creating right now, you have IVM podcasts. You're the host of the show. There are, editors, and there are creators, and there are writers on board. Now, once the podcast is shot, there's a smart contract, which we're going to talk about later, will go into place. Stuff will be already built into the smart contract, who gets paid what amount. And once the podcast is executed, and say me as a listener is watching or listening to the podcast, the blockchain first identifies if this piece of content is owned by IVM, and if this person has money to be transferred into IVM's account for her to watch the piece of content. So that gets into the whole micropayments. And once I have finished watching a podcast, or maybe say you build it into the smart contract that once this person watches, say, 30 seconds or a minute or 3 minutes of the podcast, automatically an X amount of money is transferred from this
So hosts
accounts.
will make more money. I hope our producers are listening to this.
Yeah, the host will make everybody will make a lot of money.
And it'll be more transparent, you're saying.
Very transparent. And you will not just make the money once the person has, maybe say in this month or the next month. You will keep making money in perpetuity.
Okay.
Probably, 100 years down the line, and you're not even living anymore. You have kids and grandkids. They will be earning in perpetuity for the podcast that you have created today and get paid, if that is built into the smart contract.
But one is hoping that there's this utopian metaverse blockchain where all this resides, and everyone, and it's all actionable, right? Like this is what I was saying, right? Like a lot of, like we'll speak about NFTs, but most of the people say that, yeah, I can screenshot an NFT, right? And I can use it. And I tried explaining to them that there are a lot of things which you can do now or things which you could do in the past, right? Like smoking in public places. I remember people who could smoke in aircrafts, in offices, and now how all that you can't do, right? It's like a criminal offense. So, and I was trying to explain that maybe in the future there will be this self-governed sort of a environment where all this, one won't have to follow up as a creator, go to the producer and say mera paisa do. Automatically it might happen, right? Do you see this metaverse, this on this specific blockchain actually happening? How long do you think it will happen?
In fact, that is already happening. If I remember correctly, there's this company called FilmChain. They've created a platform where if you as a movie producer just use that platform as a payment mechanism, everybody who's worked and the creators of this platform are two women, Maria and Irina, if I remember correctly, and they wanted to really, they were really shocked about how long it takes for somebody to get paid after the work has been done. So sometimes 2 months, sometimes a year, sometimes they're not even paid. So this is where this platform's mechanism comes into the picture.
So what do they do? They help you publish a content on their platform. They help disseminate it across all other platforms.
Exactly.
Probably across Netflixes of the world right now, maybe.
Right now, they are working on fair compensation. That's their first objective. So fair compensation to whoever is the stakeholder within a particular project. So yeah, if Netflix is involved and if Netflix, is a part, is trying to earn money out of being a platform, a decentralized platform who is giving fair compensation, who earns, say, for example, 20% from a piece of content, then that gets automatically credited to, say, Netflix. The actors will get another 10%. I'm just hypothetically giving you examples. The actors, the writers. So that platform immediately on a click of a button will just transfer money to all of them within seconds without you having to go through the tedious process of the paperwork or any like even bank transactions are so complicated these days.
Hold that thought, Chandni. We'll just be back from the segment which we do on our show called Eka's Commandments for Future Proofing. It is not only the web that has evolved from Web 1 to Web 2 to Web 3. Hackers and cyber criminals are also on the rise. Crypto exchanges keep getting hacked every now and then. Even major film studios and big corporates get hacked. I would strongly recommend that for every account that you create on Web3, always make sure to turn on the two-factor authentication to protect your account. While I help you with tips that help you protect yourself in the virtual world, Intel vPro secures your PCs in the real world. The dark web is full of corporate data stolen from employees' laptops. If you are an enterprise user, you need safer options. Intel vPro offers protections below the OS and provides active monitoring for threats and attacks, keeping you protected at all times and from all threats. Intel vPro, built for business. Welcome back to this fascinating conversation with Chandni. Chandni, so before the break, we were talking about, how it might, like this, it'll bring transparency to a lot of payments, etc. Now, as a content creator, let's take another step, right? As a content creator, or as a creator who owns a lot of content, right? What are my steps into the metaverse, right? Like what you said, if you don't evolve right now, you'll die, right? So imagine this is for people who work in media companies, right? And they're sitting on content which probably they have paid for, right?
Yeah.
So maybe it's been compensated. They met some directors, producers, they've paid them off, right? And they've paid them off at a value which they feel is fair, right? Like probably above market standards. Where do the terms decentralization come right now? What do they do with their content?
As a content creator, you first have to identify what is the best platform for your content to sit on. So
what if I'm a platform?
If you are a platform,
Yeah.
then you will have to build in smart contracts which have fair compensation and transparent.
Imagine fair compensation is already happening, right? Help me imagine a metaverse for a content studio, right? So let's jam a little on that. So yes, fair compensation accepted, right? It'll happen. Everyone will get paid, right? Let's talk about this decentralized metaverse. Like, can the Netflix world be like a Disney world in the metaverse where all their shows have like elements and tokens, and people can walk around wearing VR devices, and if they are entering a stand-up so one of the stand-up specials, you can probably walk into this virtual room and then experience it. Do you see something like that happening, like apart from fair compensation, etc.?
I think that is very difficult to imagine at this point. I think there are a lot of issues that first need to iron out before we can imagine that kind of world.
Sure.
We need people to trust into a new system completely, just the way in the 90s people could not trust what the internet is going to be or what is it going to do to my life. The immediate step is, yes, you need to first, blockchain has to be adopted on a mass level. And then we can actually really start imagining these situations where a company like Netflix or a Disney completely reimagines themselves as a company who is not just only unidimensionally, having like, say, if currently they own 7 or 8 or 10 businesses, they are going to expand into like maybe another 10 businesses, or maybe the current businesses will not exist anymore. They probably just make a percentage out of the content that the creators are making, which is fair. Put it on their platforms, earn a fee out of putting it out on their platforms, but really just go out there and create, have like a whole Disney World kind of metaverse where they reimagine how they would, what kind of space do they want to get into? Do they want to stick to the status quo, or do they want to really be reborn? I think Facebook, from a meta perspective, really just did that. They completely changed their name even to really get out there and be like, we don't want to be seen as a Facebook anymore. We don't want to be seen as the way we were seen in the last 10 or 15 years. Now we want people to see us in a different way. So that's exactly what each of these companies should be thinking about. But yeah, a lot needs to be ironed out before that.
So you've been working with WWE for nearly 4-5 years now. So, and WWE has been running for ages, right? Like the most successful weekly television programming. When I was in school, it had already had that accolade. The WWE network is across multiple countries. They have multiple events happening. They have super successful games on consoles, on mobile phones. So is WWE already a metaverse per se, or?
I think the company is definitely forward-thinking, and we already saw that with the Undertaker NFTs releasing.
Oh yeah, last year WrestleMania they dropped, yeah.
And that's, I think, the first step towards really getting into the blockchain space. Creating collectibles of your favorite superstar, your icon that you would be proud to own and have for the rest of your life. So I think the steps are in the right direction, and I think.
Do you think we'll be able to witness? Australian Open did something cool this year, and we've spoken about this briefly in a previous episode, where Australian Open created this metaverse. You could walk inside, you could go to multiple courts, you could hear the live commentary. Probably next year they'll have see the live matches in this virtual atmosphere. It's still part 2D, part 3D.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you imagine this happening with, say, something like WrestleMania, where people can walk in with their VR devices in their homes?
I think during WrestleMania last year, WrestleMania 37, which was completely during the pandemic when there were no live audiences into the arena, everybody was actually watching it through their they created something called WWE Thunderdome, and you could actually watch the match sitting on your on your home computer, but still be shown as a face in the audience because there were screens in the audience.
Okay, so since we're anyway talking about NFTs and link to talent and smarter contracts, and you've mentioned about smarter contracts and equal pay, etc., right? Let's deep dive into this, right? So what exactly is a smart contract? What are these terms which people hear about, ERC20, ERC721 when it comes to NFTs, etc., right?
Yeah.
And how does one make a smart contract?
Yeah, I think anybody who is familiar with the term blockchain and who is slightly geeky about it will definitely mention the word smart contract. Smart contracts is nothing but sometimes they're not even a contract. It's just terms and conditions, So once a smart contract is made, it's just like a regular contract on the digital platform. How do you make it actually smart? Is you have digital signatures on it, which are your keys.
Okay.
Which if you lose, God save you. So you have to have your keys. There's no centralized agency who is or a company actually have access. You can't say forgot password and stuff. So you have to own this key, which is your signature, and
which is truly decentralized.
Absolutely.
So there's no one who can say I'll give you a backdoor access to it. Okay.
Yeah, something like your signature right now, nobody can replicate.
Sure.
So you need to have a key, and then once the contract has all the it can be as simple as a sale between A and B to really registering your ownership on a contract, or really creating DAOs, which is your decentralized autonomous organizations. An entire organization can run on a smart contract. So they can go as complicated as that. So yeah, the smart contracts are only as smart as the person creating them. So if the person, while creating them, whatever information the coder had at the time of creating the contract, that gets locked into the contract. So in the testing phase, of course, there were a lot of dumb smart contracts also made, which should not really actually end up working. So again, it really depends on the coders really building the smart contract. It is just an automated system that if going back to the podcast example, if you were between your team to have a fair compensation, it just automatically is fed into the contract that once a condition is met, 10 people get paid in this certain percentage. If these conditions are not met, then these people do not get paid.
This does not happen. So in modern life, in real life right now, if you have a contract, which many people have, right? And if one party is not fulfilling their end, you can probably go to court, go to the police. What happens in this virtual world, right? Like, who do you go to if someone is not willing to complete their end of it?
So if the smart contract has been smartly built, it will take into consideration all the future worst possible outcomes and then have it enact a certain way. A lot of the smart contracts today, some of them are enforceable in the court of law, some of them are not. So because they're self-executing, you don't really need a middleman to come and solve your issues out, or you don't need to have a third. You're basically not trusting humans, you're trusting code to do that for you. So yes, there are a lot of scenarios. There are a lot of times when things cannot go the way it was imagined while the contract was built. That is literally just now a function of how intelligent someone is to identify the future outcomes and really just safeguard it while building the contract. And if not, then it's not that smart contracts are not reversible. There are certain scenarios where you can amend it, or you can, but just the way a regular contract works, but just the automation layer added to it.
So who do you need? You need a coder and a legal guy.
Yes.
And are smart contracts linked to specific blockchains? Like ERC is primarily Ethereum based smart contracts, right?
Right now Ethereum is known
the number one player.
Exactly, to support smart
and you have
contracts.
Solana and all these guys also coming in.
Exactly. So you choose your blockchain, you choose what blockchain makes the most sense to you to build your have your smart contract integrated. For example, if I am working with a company like FilmChain, they are on Ethereum, so I will have to build my smart contract on.
And what are these? These are like if you don't know coding and all, are you completely in the lost, or are they basic templates?
No, of course,
there templatized?
There are templates. There are templates for all the scenarios currently imagined, so you don't really have to actually do the groundwork. Just the way you have your contracts, your
for house rent maybe, right? Like you have those typical documents which no one reads and people just sign.
Exactly. So if you
can trust, right? So you're saying in a world where there is enough trust, there are some templates which so you don't have to be too scared when it comes to smart contracts.
Yeah, it's just it may be sounding something like we are not really it's new, but we have really been exposed to terms and conditions all our lives. And I think it's just that. So if, say, you are on a platform and then they say, we'll not let you go ahead till you don't take on the terms and conditions, you're not going to sit and actually read the whole thing, right? You're just going to be like, yeah, I know. I mean, what's the worst that can happen if this outcome is not according to. So yeah, a lot of smart contracts. But if there was a sale between two people, and if you're buying rights from me, then of course I'm going to really read every single word of it and make sure that I am not going to have any issues in the future. So again, there will be drafts of the contracts that you read before you actually sign it and put your digital signature as your key in it. And yeah, I mean,
how expensive is it to make a smart contract? Like, how does one do it?
Well, I would not have a lot of insights into that because I've not really deployed a smart contract.
But do different blockchains have different gas fees and all? Do gas fees come in towards smart contract? Or?
So right now, gas fees is a huge problem in the also on platforms like OpenSea when you are trying to build an NFT. There are solutions being built where the gas fee is reduced, and the gas fee is nothing but just your the people who are actually building the platform for you. It's it's their fees. They need to be compensated right now. So I think later on, as the platforms become more and more evolved, there is a point where we can, and there are a lot of platforms that are working on completely reducing the gas fees. So you do have platforms like OpenSea charging you a huge amount, but then there are also alternate platforms that are being worked on right now who are coming up as competitors and be like, hey, we have no gas fees, so launch your NFTs on our platforms. So stuff like that is also happening.
So guys, OpenSea is the largest marketplace for NFTs. Talking about OpenSea, I wanted to give you an example, and then we'll probably move to a question of DAOs and dApps, which you mentioned, right? So on OpenSea, the first animation series from NFTs on OpenSea, this is project called Deadheads.
Yeah.
And I was reading about it and I found it really interesting, right? So again, it's just typical characters, of zombies.
Yeah.
Okay. And illustrated zombies, and it just caught up. Okay. And I think like some 5,000 different zombies must have been minted, or 500. But the cool thing is, this is some sort of a DAO came up, okay, of all the people who owned these NFTs, these non-fungible tokens.
Right.
And they built out a story. Okay, so they built out a story, and then probably they hired, through their DAO, they figured out and they compensated probably an animator.
Yeah.
And they came up with an animated series which dropped on YouTube. I actually came to know about this when I was listening to another podcast where it was not by one of the creators or the early minters, right? It was a guy who had invested in one of the characters in the whole Deadhead world. Okay, that character had become so popular that he was now announcing a spin-off series of that one character. And I was like, wow, man, this is crazy. Like this I think might be the future of, I don't know, all movies, but definitely a multiverse movie, right? Like something would probably Disney, Marvel do, where, more characters can come in, and like what you said at the start, right? Where, you can actually own a part of the movie.
Yeah.
And do you see this happening? Or do you still think it's going to take like decades for something like this to...
I mean, we are already seeing it happening. Have you seen that Amitabh Bachchan and Salman Khan and Kamal Hassan already have released their NFTs, which means that you can actually own a part of their collectibles?
I still think they're very gimmicky, right? Like,
I mean, it's at least, there's... they're trying to show that they're aware of it, and sometimes it also gives you the first mover tag that that yes, the first person to actually create.
They can quickly make some money off it, probably.
Yeah, exactly. So coming back to the project.
Tell me about DAOs, right? Like tell me, like this was done to a DAO, and I wanted to ask you that, right? Like firstly, for our viewers, right? Like we've dropped this word about DAO in multiple episodes, right? Like from someone educated at Harvard for blockchain, right? Like this is like. Explain to us, probably like a 5-year-old and a 15-year-old, okay, what exactly is a DAO? And in this media space, do you know of any other examples of DAOs and dApps in place?
I just want to simplify it.
Sure.
It just sounds a little like DAO, sounds like a very heavy word just dropped on you. It's just decentralized autonomous organizations. It's an organization at the end of the day. Okay. So an organization can have multiple projects that they work on, which are called dApps. So if I were to give a real world example and a very basic example to a 5-year-old, it would be a Facebook or / Meta now is equal to a DAO.
But is it like a DAO means the power? There's no hierarchy in place, right?
No,
like everything is happening.
I'm just talking about a very lay example over here. The controlling organization can be Meta. Your platforms, which is like your Facebook, Instagram, and any of the platforms, can just be called dApps. So they're just applications that are a part of a particular organization, and how this organization manages these, these dApps, and how their smart contracts are built to compensate and truly decentralize this entire organization, is what the DAO will work on. So it's really just in my head as simple as that.
But let's discuss about the word autonomous, right?
Yeah.
Like what is autonomous in a DAO? Autonomous means decisions being taken automatically.
There are a lot of,
like a system becomes so smart and understands.
Yeah. Today there is still a lot of manual work happening, which has a lot of human error, and there are ways where you can't really shift it to digital systems because it's maybe could be expensive, or there could be other reasons. But it truly actually means that they are automatic and things happen, at least the basic stuff, where something as simple as why are payments taking 2 months or 3 months to reach the artist or the person who is like a contributor within a project. So things like those, there's a lot of cleaning up that's going to happen, which it is going to just honor as a first level, make very automatic, and then as you said, it depending on how complicated and how intelligent they become to actually automate these things that are very predictable.
They can automate certain decision making and all.
100%.
But I still think to reach ultimate level of autonomy, autonomous state, it's still not happened, right? Like it's still more theoretical. Hence dApps exist, right?
One of the reasons why that's also happening is because we as people who can't really wrap our heads around this, there's a whole generation which really can't thinking of letting go of control for the benefit of for the larger good. So if you ask maybe a company to like say, how about you are not just one platform, but like your employees get more power, these people get more power, you are not the only ones.
They'll be like, kya baat kar rahe ho, Chandni?
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
so that fear of
for sure.
That fear of letting go is also the reason even governments right now are fascinated by the technology, but then they are also super scared of it. But on the side, they are doing their research. On the side, they are creating centralized blockchains, which is also a term which means really making your internal systems efficient, but not really decentralizing it, which is not really truly blockchain in its true sense, right? But then they are trying to use the technology to an extent to make their processes efficient, but to let go of control is a huge step further in really truly going decentralized. So a lot of companies right now, right from your legal systems to your governments to even companies like Facebook, who are trying to be a little mature right now and saying, hey, we're going to be forward thinking, we're not going to get ourselves engulfed in this fear of like what happens to us if we just let go of control. But I think it really requires for you to educate yourself and dive deep into what this technology is going to do for you, which I think will take time.
No, but on that note, since you mentioned generations, right? And this is a question which I ask a lot of our guests. The current generation, right? And in this world which they are growing into, what are the jobs which are going to become obsolete in the media and entertainment space in the next 10 to 15 years?
Yeah.
And what are the avenues which are really rosy, and which are the ones which people should actually spend time in, upskilling and learning about over the next to future-proof themselves in the media and entertainment space, right?
Right. So as I mentioned before, the jobs that I see completely going out of the picture are the middlemen. Middlemen are right now people who have information advantage. You have your record labels, you have your agencies that connect the artist to say the publishing or the central authorities. So now middlemen can also be your platforms like YouTube, Amazon, and the likes. So if I'm creating content, what is my end goal for an audience to see it? I'm just using a YouTube as a vehicle to get my content to my watcher or listener. So if I would if someone told me that if YouTube is paying me just 20% of the content that I create, but if I were to go on a blockchain platform and get 80% of the revenues, and I would be like, hell yeah, I want that. So again, platforms like YouTube will have to reimagine themselves and see how they can still be go from a centralized entity to a decentralized entity, and that's again the fear of letting go, right?
Yeah.
So that's one. And in the future, the kind of jobs that and especially people who are in the media and entertainment space, as step one, you don't have to it's not scary. You don't have to get dive into code or something. You can still be blockchain. At the end of the day is still back end. You can still learn how content is going to be distributed in the future. So content distribution, marketing, sales is just going to be the language is just going to change now. So I think if you want to upskill yourself, the way you talk about it is going to change.
Okay.
And that is the only way forward.
Be
right
curious,
now.
find out
Be
more
curious,
about the space.
Just don't be worried or scared about these heavy words being thrown around, because initially I too was
Listen to this episode again.
probably a couple of times. But in theory, it is very simple stuff. We've just jargonized it with so many words and DAOs and dApps and smart contracts. But at the end of the day, it's just very simple, basic stuff which anybody with some basic common sense can understand. Yeah.
Chandni, so this is the last part of our conversation, and this is something which not a lot of people are being talking about, right? I had a previous guest on a previous episode, and he mentioned to me after the episode, ki, Eka, whatever we are doing right now, the audience, I think, is still very niche. So he's like, yeah, they're not like Web3, and conversations around Web3 seem to be very elitist, and it often seems to be like a boys' gang, right? And that's what got me to ask you, why are there lesser women in this space, right? Linked to gender diversity probably coming in, like you spoke about fair pay at the start, right? And in real life, fair pay right now is very gender-led also, right? Why are there lesser women in blockchain? Or there are not, and I'm probably not I've not done enough research, right? What's the scene?
I feel from a very first level, as you mentioned, it is male dominated because men are just naturally the early adopters of technology. It's just the way it is. Now, how do you encourage more women to get into the space? Again, I spoke about the jargons being thrown around and then make it sound like heavy tech-led work or an industry to get into. I think that whole conversation around removing the tech part of it, if I'm working in a social media agency tomorrow, I don't need to learn to code what's the coding that goes behind a Facebook post. So I need to just understand the front end of it. And that's exactly what the blockchain platforms are going to demand now. So women are underrepresented in the tech space. You probably can't do something about it in the immediate future. That will probably just require your young women to take on to get into the technology space and, get into coding and stuff. That's one part of it. But in existing companies and agencies where women are already into the media and entertainment space, already working, in movie productions, working in social media, working, in music, they can just minus the technology part of it and really understand how is it gonna...
How do they get started? If it's a young woman who's tuning in and is curious about blockchain, how do they get started? How do they foray into this?
Well, start by listening to the podcast. I think there's this I feel like when I started out back in 2019, it was like I was just jumping into the ocean to swim by myself. Back in 2019 versus just 2020 and 21, the amount of conversations that have increased. True. And I was really surprised because I thought maybe this is going to happen in the next 5 or 8 years, but it happened in 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, so
we are sitting here...
Crazy evolution.
We are sitting here on this podcast actually talking about it. There are companies in India that are already deploying it. There are companies around the world already deploying it. So what if it's in the nascent stages? There's always, a first time to everything. So I think that exposure and that information exposure, even during my research, I was seeing the amount of articles that have just mushroomed in the last 1 year versus what it was in 2020, because I would struggle if I really want to understand a concept in 2019. There was just not enough information available. But now that people are immersing themselves and people, bloggers are writing about it in very fun, easy language rather than, other very, very very tech-led organizations only using jargons to talk about it. So yeah, there are people who are putting out some good information out there, and maybe I'll send across the links that people can really...
Super interesting, Chandni. Just one last question linked to the gender bit, right? Where do you see gender going into this Web3 metaverse space, right? Because we are living in a generation where everyone now has their pronouns, right? So do you think every avatar in this Web3 space, in this metaverse, will have a pronoun? Will it be fluid? Will there be people like, this is a joke, right? A lot of women characters in gaming worlds are actually played by men, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I don't understand the psyche. Maybe you can tell us a little about that. But what is, like, in the metaverse, is gender going to be a big debate, or the current generation probably does not really care too much about gender demarcation?
In our circle, right now, in my circle personally, I do not see that a lot. But yes, of course, you do see gender becoming a huge conversation. And if in the real world scenario, if you have people wanting to be a different gender and wanting to be addressed as not the gender that automatically fits them into a box.
Non-binary,
Yeah. So you are just going to, and if you are into a digital world where you can really actually change your appearance to, which you can't do in real life. So yes, that's literally going to be, trying to like gender diversity on steroids. So you are just going to have different, and as you said, men are playing as women are playing as, men. Sometimes there's going to be times when you will not even actually see the real person behind. So in the metaverse, as I previously said, if there's a virtual scenario created where I'm attending my friend's birthday party, who knows? Like, you could come as a woman and I would not even know, and just introduce yourself as like a person who I will never know who's a real person behind it. So I do see things like that happening, and it's just not crazy to think about it, because maybe 10 years earlier it was crazy to think what's happening right now, but then with the way things are happening right now, I'm like, yes, this is also a possibility.
Thanks, Chandni. Such a fascinating conversation we had.
I had a lot of fun as well.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And that was another great episode of Future Proofing presented by Intel vPro, built for business. If you love this episode, please like it, share it, comment, subscribe. Do all that. And we also have some really good news for you. We have a contest running. We're giving out free NFTs and future-proofing merchandise. All you have to do is follow IVM Podcasts across all the social media platforms at IVM Podcasts. You can also follow me. I'm at Ekalavya across Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Ekalavya B on Twitter. Thank you so much, and see you on the next episode.